Hey everyone, welcome back. This is part 2 of our After Effects mini-series. In part 1 we created a clean Apple style animation, and today we are moving on to a new animations that will be another piece of our show. We will start with a small recording rectangle that grows and moves to the center, then transform into a dynamic Spotify animation. Finally it turns into a glowing series rectangle with the text inside. Each part adds something different, and by the end we will put them all together into one polished shot. All the project files and assets are linked in the description below so you can follow along. With that being said, let's dive into the animation. If you didn't watch part 1 and you want to jump straight into the second animation, don't worry, you can follow along from here. On the short layer, add the rough edges effect. Set border to 100 and lower the fractal influence to 0%. This will give the edges a rounded look. At 7.5 seconds, create a scale keyframe and slightly increase the layer size so the rounded edges aren't visible. Then move to the cut points of the layers and shrink the scale down to 75%. Next, add an inner shadow effect. Under the setting, push opacity to 100% and increase the size to 250. Move forward 4 frames, create a size keyframe, then go back 4 frames and drop the size to 0. Open Graph Editor for scale, create a fast easy in, grab both pairs of keyframes and shift them a little forward in time. Now let's add white rectangle in bottom left corner of the screen. Go into the shape settings, raise the roundness to 50 and center the anchor point. Inside that rectangle, add a small red rectangle in the left corner. Set its roundness to 20. Add a microphone icon to the comp, place it above the red rectangle, scale it down to 8% and align it to the center. Apply the tint effect and change the map black to white. Next, add a text layer that says really good readers, disable the constraint properties, stretch the Y scale to 130, lower everything to 50, and position the text next to the rectangle. With the pen tool, draw a short line next to the text, remove the fill, enable stroke, set it to red with a thickness of 8 pixels, and under stroke setting, switch the line cap to round cap. Duplicate the line layer and move the duplicate line slightly to the right. Then select the second one and shift it a bit further to the right. Lower the opacity of the text to 70%. For the microphone icon, add a drop shadow, set the size to 30 and reduce the opacity to 50%. Now duplicate the white rectangle layer. On the bottom rectangle, apply the 4-color gradient effect. Place each point in the center of the rectangle's edges. Then add a glow effect, increase the glow radius to 30 and lower the opacity of the layer to 50%. This creates a glowing color background behind the rectangle. Finally, parent the glowing color layer and all the layers above it to the main white rectangle. At 8 seconds and 20 frames, create a position and scale keyframes on the white rectangle. Move back 6 frames, shift the rectangle to the left and scale it down to 0%. To finish it off, we will add a bounce animation for a more dynamic look. For anyone who hasn't seen the previous part, I'm using the bounce tool, which is completely free and linked in the video description. Grab the position keyframes, make sure the property says position and click bounce it. Then select the scale keyframes, switch to scale and hit bounce it as well. Next, go to the last set of keyframes. On the red rectangle, create a scale keyframe and center its center point. For the microphone icon, move the anchor point to the bottom, then create a scale and rotation keyframes. Move back 6 frames, set the red rectangle scale to 0%, rotate the microphone icon to the right and set its scale to 0% as well. Add bounce to both scale keyframes and rotation keyframes. Then grab all those keyframes and shift them slightly to the right for a better timing. Now we want to separate the words in the sentence into individual layers, and in the duplicate layer copy and delete all the words except the first word. Duplicate it again, paste the copy, and move it accordingly to the template. Repeat this process until each word has its own layer aligned in the right place. Finally, delete the original text that serves as a template. Center the anchor point of the word layers. Go to the last keyframes and create a position keyframes for all the 3 words layers. Move back 6 frames, shift the first word upward, the second word downward, and the third word to the right. Select the keyframes and apply bounce to them. Move a bit further in the timeline and create a rotation keyframes for the 2 red lines layers. Under the settings, also add a path keyframes. Then move forward 5 frames, Adjust the rotation of both lines so their top ends touch each other. Raise the bottom point of the right line upward and do the same for the bottom point of the left line. We want to bring them closer so they form more of a circle shape. Select the keyframes and enter the graph editor to create a sharp entrance. Create a small red rectangle above the two lines, set its roundness to 5, and center the anchor point. At the center of the keyframes, create opacity keyframe for the small rectangle, set it to 0%, and delete the part of the layer before it. Move to the last keyframes and raise the opacity to 100%. Move to the area of the last keyframes of words, create a scale keyframe for the two lines, move 5 frames backward, reduce the scale to 0%, and add a bounce to the scale keyframes. Shortly after the start of the small red rectangle layer, create a scale keyframe, move back to the very beginning of the layer, set the scale to 0%, and add a bounce to the scale. Create a red circle with a stroke of 1 around the small rectangle, center the anchor point, and position it perfectly around the rectangle. In the setting under Add, apply trim path. At the last keyframe of the small rectangle, create an end keyframe for the trim path and set it to 0%. Move for just under 1 second and set it to 100%. Select those keyframes, open the graph editor and give it a sharp easy in. To keep things clean, go to the first keyframe of the white rectangle, select that layer and all the layers above it, and delete the parts of the layers that appears before this point. Now select those same layers and set the track mate to the video layer. The video's visibility will automatically drop, so bring its visibility back up. Also parent the first 4 layers to the white rectangle. Move forward 2 seconds, cut the layers, move the trimmed parts upward, and remove the track mate. That's because we will want to scale up the rectangle so it won't be confined within the frame. On the white rectangle layer, create a scaling position keyframes and also add a size keyframe. Open the settings of the glowing rectangle behind it and link its size to the size of the white rectangle. Move forward 6 frames. On the white rectangle, increase the scale to 180, move it to the center of the screen, disable the concert properties for the size, and expand the rectangle further. At the start of the layers, create a point keyframes for the gradient ramp of the glowing rectangle. Then go back to the first keyframes and adjust the points to match the position of the large rectangle. Go back to the previous keyframes and create a glow radius keyframe. Move to the last set of keyframes and increase the glow radius to 120. Move forward 3 frames, create opacity keyframe for the video and set it to 0%. Then move 3 frames and return it to 100%. Select the 3 word layers and lower the opacity to 50%. Right click and create a new solid. Apply the audio spectrum effect. Position it into the top third of the white rectangle. Adjust its start and end points. And set the audio layer to the last video layer. Increase the frequency bands to 100. Set the thickness to 5.2 and raise the softness to 100. Finally, push the maximum height to 1500 and change the inside and outside colors to red. This is how it looks. Parent the spectrum layer to the white rectangle and also set its track mate to the white rectangle. Then go to the start of the layers and delete the parts of the spectrum layer that appears before that point. Move forward 5 frames, create a scale and opacity keyframes, then go back to the start of the layer, move the audio up and set the scale to 0%. Select the scale keyframes and add a bounce. Then do the same for the position keyframes. Add a text layer and type any time value you want. Center the anchor point. Set the white scale to 115. Increase the overall size to 150 and place the text below the microphone. At the start of the layers, delete the parts of the text layer that appears before this point. Now separate the letters into individual layers. Duplicate the text. In the duplicated layer, copy and delete everything except for the first letter. Then duplicate it again, paste the other letters, and position them accordingly to the template. Repeat this process until each letter has its own layer above the proper place. Finally, delete the original text layer that was used as a template. For all the letters, move their anchor points to the bottom left corner. Move 5 frames for the start of the layers. Then create a scale, position, rotation and opacity keyframes. Go back to the start of the layer. Shift the letters to the right. Set their scale to 0%. Change rotation to -60. and lower the opacity to 0%. Apply bounce to all the scale keyframes, position keyframes, and rotation keyframes. Finally, add offset of 2 frames between the layers so they don't all animate in at the same time. Now parent all the ladders to the white rectangle, then duplicate them and move the duplicated above. On the first duplicated ladder layer, apply gradient ramp effect. Set the start of the ramp to the first ladder and the end of the ramp to the last ladder. Change the start color to pink and the end color to light green. Add glow effect, slightly increase the glow radius, then copy the glow and the gradient ramp and paste them onto the other duplicated ladder layer. Move 10 frames after the last keyframe of the first duplicated letter and set its opacity to 0%. Copy its last 2 opacity keyframes, go to the last keyframes of the second layer, select all the duplicated layers except for the first one, paste the keyframes and stagger them with the 2 frames offset to match their layers. Go to the reads word layer, duplicate it, and change the duplicated text to the sentence of things. Move the new sentence slightly to the right, delete its position keyframes, then select the 3 words layers beneath. At the start of the duplicated layer, create a position keyframes, move forward 10 frames, and shift the 3 words so they fit inside the red rectangle. Create opacity keyframes for all 3, set them to 0%, then go back a few frames and raise them to 50%. Take the last keyframes of the second word, move them 2 frames forward, take the last keyframes of the third word, move them 4 frames forward. Just before the last word disappears, move the sentence to the right so it begins inside the red rectangle. Create position and opacity keyframes for it, lower opacity to 0%, move forward 4 frames and raise it to 50%. Then move forward 2 frames and shift the perps to its final position. Finally, take the 4 word layers and move them beneath the microphone and the red rectangle layer. If you learned something new so far, make sure to subscribe and keep following along for more advanced tips. At the beginning of the first letter layers, go down and create an opacity keyframe for the background layer. Move forward a bit and raise it to 100%. Create a new rectangle covering the top part of the white rectangle. Increase the roundness to 90. Duplicate it, turn the top layer into adjustment layer, and link it to the bottom layer. On the top layer, add a fastbox blur effect and set the blur radius to 30. Then, add a gradient ramp effect, place the start and the end points on the side of the rectangle, change the start color to dark green and the end color to light green, and raise the blending with original to 60. Add the Spotify icon, apply the tint effect, set map Y2 to black, map black 2 to green, and connect its trackmate to the bottom rectangle layer. Go to the second 1105, create a scaling position keyframes for the big white rectangle, move 7 frames forward, move the rectangle up slightly, reduce its size, and align it right above the green rectangle. Select the keyframes, enter to the graph, and apply Fast Easy Out. Select the white rectangle layer and the glowing color layer beneath it, and delete their parts after this point. And parent both Spotify icon layer and the non-adjustment rectangle layer to the second green rectangle layer. Set the green rectangle scale to 0%, move forward 6 frames, raise it to 100%, and add a bounce to the keyframes. Go back to its first keyframe, select the non-adjustment rectangle, the green rectangle, and the Spotify icon, create an opacity keyframe, and lower them to 0%. Move to the last keyframe and raise them to 100%. Shortly after 11 seconds, create position keyframe for the text layer of things. Also, create a position keyframe for the small red rectangle layer and the microphone layer. Create a position keyframe for the small red rectangle inside the circle. Create a position keyframe for the circle around it. Create a position keyframe for the audio layer. Finally, select all the numbers layers and create a position keyframe for them as well. Move forward 6 frames. Move the layers down. Raise the audio up, move the circle and its inner rectangle to the right, move the microphone and the surrounding red rectangle to the left, move the text layer up, go back to the previous keyframes, select all the layers you just added position keyframes to, create opacity keyframes and move forward a bit to set the opacity to 0%. This created a smooth transition. Parent all those layers to the big white rectangle. Additionally, at the last opacity keyframe, Shrink the layer and delete the front parts. Add a text layer and write "That's how happening." Increase the Y scale to 150. Separate the sentence into words exactly as done previously, so each word has its own layer. Finally, remember to delete the bottom template layer. Select the words and center their angle points. When the green rectangle reaches its maximum size, create a position keyframe for the words. Move 6 frames back, then shift the first word to the left, the second word up, and the third word to the right. Select the keyframes, add a bounce, and parent all the 3 words to the rectangle without the visibility. Add an opacity keyframe for the words, lower the opacity to 0%, move to the last keyframes, and raise the opacity to 100%. Add a glow effect to the Spotify icon, change the glow color to A and B colors, simple color A to the matte black 2, and color B from color A. Lower the glow threshold to 0%, reduce the glow intensity to 0.1, and raise the glow radius to 180. Add a drop shadow to the Spotify icon, set the size to 80, and lower the opacity to 30%. Set the anchor point to the bottom right of the icon. At 11.5 seconds, create a rotation keyframe, move 2.5 seconds forward, and shift the icon to the right until it disappears. Enter the graph editor and create a fast easy in for the keyframes. Move back to the previous keyframe and create a size and position keyframes for the green rectangle. In the rectangle without the visibility, link its size to the green rectangle size, move to the last rotation keyframe of the icon, adjust the green rectangle size by turning off the constraint properties, slightly raise its Y, and move it up slightly using position. Return to the previous keyframes, select the word layer, add a position keyframes, then move to the last keyframes and raise the words so they are approximately the original position. Select all the last keyframes, open the graph editor, and create a fast easy in. Since the animation is a bit slow, bring the first and the second keyframes closer together. Since we scale up the green rectangle, we cannot see the edges of the Spotify icon, so move it a little further to the right until it goes off the screen. Duplicate the green rectangle, remove the effects and the adjustment layer from the duplicate rectangle, change its color to black, and add an inner glow. In the settings, increase the size to 140, reduce the opacity to 10%, and set the blend mode to screen. Add the 3 album images to the comp, slightly reduce their scale, and add a rectangle with a 4 pixel stroke around them. Increase the rectangle's roundness to 40, place it beneath the Travis Scott album, and make sure the fill is set to brilliant with the first color white and the second color gray. Stretch the gray color to the top and the white color to the bottom. Duplicate the rectangle and place it under the next album. Then duplicate it again and place it under the last album. Select the 3 rectangles and the 3 albums and parent them to the layer of the rectangle without visibility. Move Kanye's album and its rectangle to the left side, and move the Central C album and its rectangle to the corresponding right side. Since the green rectangle is slightly too large, go to its last keyframes and reduce its size slightly using the size property. Because the top rectangle with the inner glow is not linked to the green rectangle, scale it down to match exactly, and copy the white size from the green rectangle to the inner glow rectangle. Select the green rectangle and the inner glow rectangle layer and raise their position slightly. Adjust the word layers so they remain in the previous positions. Select the rectangles and the album layers, raise them slightly and turn them into 3D layers. Parent each rectangle to its corresponding album. For Kanye's album, set Y rotation to -10 and X rotation to -5. For Central C's album, set Y rotation to 10 and X rotation to -5. Center the anchor points for the rectangles and the albums. Move to the point where the green rectangles grows and all the rectangles and the albums are visible. Create a scale and position keyframes. Move 5 frames backward, lower the layer, and reduce their size to half. Select all the scale keyframes and add a bounce. Then select all the position keyframes and add a bounce as well. Move to the last keyframes, disconnect them so they are not longer linked, and parent them to the green rectangle. It should look like this. As you can see, a flicker occurs. To fix it, go to the first keyframes, And for Central C's album, reduce the Z position so the album sits in front of the rectangle. Do the same for Kanye's album. Move to the last keyframes and raise the Z position of both Kanye's and Central C's albums to -1. Since those 3D layers, it's important to make sure the album layers are positioned in front of the Z exits. Go back to the previous keyframes, select all the albums and their rectangles, and trim the layers to delete the parts before. Move Kanye's album and its rectangle 2 frames backward, and move Central C's album and its rectangle 2 frames forward. Finally, bring the Spotify icon to the top layer, and this is how it should look. Add text and write Travis Scott. Center its anchor point, increase the Y scale to 130, then reduce all to 50. Position it on the left above Travis' image, make it ready, move the layer below the Spotify icon, and delete its portion of layer that extends before his album layer. Duplicate the text, place it above the Kanye's album layer, stretch it to match the layer length, and change the text to Kanye West. Move the text to the left, set X rotation to -5 and Y rotation to -10, and position it on the left above the album. If it's disappeared behind the album, raise its Z position to 0. Duplicate the text again, place it above the Central C's album, shorten the layer to match its length, and change the text to Central C. Position it on the left above the album, set Y rotation to 10. Since the text is about Travis' album, reduce its Z position until it disappears behind. Parent each text layer to its corresponding rectangle. Add another Spotify icon to the comp. Move it to the upper left corner, scale it to 10%, and place it next to the text. When the large Spotify icon is no longer visible, trim and delete its layer, move 2 frames backward, and delete the part of the small Spotify icon that extended before. Center its anchor point at the bottom, create a rotation keyframe, rotate it to -70, move 5 frames forward, and rotate it back to 0. Select the rotation keyframes and add a bounce. Add glow effect to the icon, lower the glow intensity to 0.1, and increase the glow radius to 180. Add the glow effect to the text, increase the glow radius to 150, then copy the glow and paste it onto the next 2 words. Add another Spotify icon above the background layer, move it to the bottom right corner, duplicate it, and move the duplicate to the top left corner. Just before the main rectangle turns green, center the anchor point of the top icon to the top left and the bottom icon to the bottom right. Rotate both icons to 95 degrees, create a rotation keyframes, move 1 second forward, and rotate it back to 0 degrees. Open the graph, create a fast easy in, and pre-compose them. Add a fastbox blur effect to the comp and increase the blur radius to 250. Create a rectangle roughly the size of the green rectangle, increase its roundness to 95, place it under the green rectangle, and center its anchor point. The rectangle looks a bit too large, so open the rectangle path, reduce its Y size, and raise it slightly so it sits beneath the green rectangle. Duplicate the large rectangle, set the duplicate track mate for the layer below, and enable adjustment layer. Add a fastbox blur to the top layer, increase the blur radius to 15, copy the gradient ramp from the green rectangle and paste it onto the top rectangle. Adjust the start ramp to the top left corner and the end ramp to the bottom right corner. Then increase the blend with original to 80%. Create a rectangle at the bottom part of the main rectangle, center its anchor point, add a fastbox blur effect and increase the blur radius to 35. Then add a text inside it containing a song lyrics. Any song will do. I chose the song Band for Band by Central C, and of course I will add the song in the description. Increase the Y scale of the text to 130 and scale the text itself to 150. Position the text above the blur rectangle in the center and link its track mate to the rectangle so the text only appears in that area. Add a gradient ramp effect to the text. Set the start of the ramp to the center and the end of the ramp to one of the edges. Click swap colors, change the ramp shape to radial ramp, and set the start color to gray. In this part of the text, create a new line and write even subconsciously on both sides. Duplicate the text layer, delete the text in the duplicate layer, and write the same sentence again. Position the duplicated text above the original spot, remove the gradient ramp, add the glow effect, and increase the glow radius to 130. And link the show text layer to the full song layer. At 12.5 seconds, when the line begins, create a position keyframe onto the full song layer, move 3 seconds forward when the line ends, and raise the text upward. Enter the graph editor and apply easy ease. Return to the first keyframe on the first text layer on the sentence, click Animate, Opacity, set it to 0%, create a start keyframe, move to the last keyframe and raise the start value to 100%. Apply easy ease in the graph editor for a smooth animation. It should look like this. Add a text layer and write lyrics. Increase its Y scale to 130. Center its anchor point and position the letter in the top left corner. Apply a glow effect to the text and raise the glow radius to 170. Move to the seconds to the last keyframes of the green rectangle. Select all the layers that make up the lyrics rectangle and trim the parts of the layer that occur before this point. Select the lyrics text layer, the song layer, the two layers of the rectangles without the visibility, and parent them to the large rectangle. Move 6 frames forward and create a scale and position keyframes for the large rectangle. Go back to the start of the layer, raise the rectangle up, and reduce its scale to 0%. Apply bounce to the scale keyframes and to the position keyframes. In the last keyframe, select the layers composing the lyrics rectangle. Create an opacity keyframe, turn to the start of the layers, set opacity to 0%, and move them below to the top rectangle layer. This is the result. Add the pause and the play icons, move them downward, and scale them to 15%. Apply the tint effect, set the map black to white, then copy the tint and paste it on the other icon. Move the play icon to the left, duplicate it, and move the copy to the right. Right-click on the duplicate layer, go to the transform and select Flip Horizontal. Using the pen tool, draw a straight line with a wide stroke of 12 pixels. In the stroke settings, change the line cap to round cap. The icon looks a bit too big, so reduce the icon slightly to 12%. Be aware that when scaling all the icons together, they might flip. This happened accidentally in my project. Make sure it's not happened to you. Select the 3 icons and the lyrics rectangle, create the scale keyframes, move 5 frames backward, set the scale to 0%, then select the scale keyframes and apply a bounce. In the line setting, click Add and choose Trim Path. In the Trim Path setting, set End to 0% and create a start keyframe. Move half second forward and set the end to 100%. Enter the graph editor and create a fast easy ease. Duplicate the line, lower the opacity of the bottom line to 50%, move its layer slightly forward, extend the last keyframe a bit, then set it to 25%. Add a gradient ramp effect to the top line, placing the start of the ramp at the beginning of the line and the end of ramp at the end. Change the start color to yellow and the end color to orange. Add a glow effect. Set glow threshold to 0% and raise the glow radius to 90. Add glow to the icon, increase its radius to 500, then copy and paste the glow to the other 2 icons. At 15.5 seconds, select all the layers above the lyrics rectangle, create opacity keyframes, move slightly forward, and set the opacity to 0%. Trim the layers and delete the part after. Go to the Spotify icon comp, create an opacity keyframe, and set it to 0%. Do the same for the background layer. Move back to the previous keyframes, and raise the opacity of both comp and background to 100%. Slightly move back, create a scale, opacity, and size keyframes. Move to the keyframes of the solid in comp, increase the size to 105%, opacity to 100%, and reduce the size of the solid to 0%. Now we are left with just the layer of the large rectangle and the large rectangle within the visibility underneath. So link the size of the layer without the visibility to the large rectangle layer above it. Move back to the point where all the details are still visible. Create a size, roundness and position keyframes for the large rectangle and a roundness keyframe for the layer without the visibility underneath. Move to the end of the layers, reduce the size to the desired value, move it down and set roundness to 30 for both top and bottom layers. Add bounce to the size, make sure the property is set to selected, go back to the previous keyframes, and create keyframes for the blending with original, end color, end ramp, start color, and start of ramp. Move to the last keyframes, position the start and end of ramp at the edges of the rectangle. Change the start color to blue dark, then color to light grayish blue, and reduce the blend with the original to 40%. Duplicate the layer without the visibility, move it below, remove its fill, add a stroke of 4 pixels, and restore its visibility. Add a 4-color gradient effect, center the point in the middle of the rectangle, change color 2 to orange, and color 4 to turquoise. Add a glow effect to the layer, then add a Gaussian blur and increase the blurriness to 30. Stand at the end of the layers, delete the point of the layer before, remove any previous opacity keyframes, create a new opacity keyframe, set it to 0%, move slightly forward, and raise it to 70%. Place the series speech video above the rectangle layer, position it on top, add linear color key effect, and sample the key color from the black background to remove it. Position the series to the left of the rectangle, increase the scale to 125, and 5 frames from the end of the layer, create a position scale keyframe. Move to the end of the layers, shift series left, scale it down to 0%, add a bounce to the scale keyframes and to the position keyframes, and make it trackmate to the layer without the visibility. Add a text and write "If you don't respect yourself." Increase the white scale to 130% and scale everything to 200%. Center the text so it starts after series. Create a rectangle to define the text area, place it below the text layer, and make the text a trackmate to it. Shortly after the start of the layers, move the text right so it's hidden, create a position keyframe, move 1 second forward, and shift the text so the end of the sentence is nearly at the middle of the rectangle, leaving space on the side for the emoji. Select the keyframes, enter the graph editor, and create a sharp entry. Move the text layer and its rectangle above the series layer, add glow to the series icon, and increase the glow radius to 200. Add the set emoji clip after the text, position it to start at the end of the upper layers, place the emoji on the right of the rectangle, and when the text nearly reaches the final spot, create a scale keyframe for the emoji and reduce it to 0%. Move 5 frames forward, raise the scale to 60%, choose the scale keyframes and add a bounce. Finally, add a glow to the emoji and increase the glow radius to 330.
They are like really good readers of things that are happening even subconsciously on both sides. So if you don't respect yourself.
And that's all for part 2. Now we've added another animation to our collection and we are one step closer to the final shot. In the next video we'll keep building with a fresh animation, so make sure to subscribe and join me for part 3. See you there.